Wow, what a game! So I finished Persona 3 FES for... it was a couple of days ago, but oh my god, I must talk about it. First off, in the beginning of the game, I was so confused. I didn't know what to expect. I went in blind, and the opening and the opening hours was very tumultuous. You got thrown into a lot of different scenarios that you just didn't really know how to handle. So the game had a great opening, and I think the first 10 hours are they're almost perfect. But then we have the rest of the game, of course. I think that there are some things that are very, very good that should be here's how you write a video game or a character or a social link and stuff like that. And other things are less good, if I put it like that. The voice acting is stellar. It really is freaking great. It's just a shame that they didn't use fully voiced lines in certain places, especially like the later games did with the 10th social link. When you max out the social link, then they could have used some sort of voice acting. It would have improved it a lot, in my opinion. That's another thing. The social links are very hit and miss. Some of them are so extremely boring, and there were just a few that I actually enjoyed. I did enjoy, probably my favorites were Akinari and the old couple, actually. Those were probably my favorite social links aside from Fuka and Aegis. And that leads me into another thing, is that the forced romance is so annoying. It takes away so much from the entire game that you have to romance everyone except Aegis then. A shame. And speaking of social links, Junpei should have had one social link. I know he has one in Persona 3 Portable, but that's a romance social link, I think. I'm not entirely sure, I haven't read up on it, but I know he has one, and he should have had one here as well, in my opinion. As we already talked about Junpei, he's probably the best character in the game, except perhaps Aegis, if I have to choose. They are the most interesting in terms of both storyline and character evolution, stuff like that. So those two are... And Junpei especially, he evolved so much throughout the game. At first I thought he was kind of a douchebag, an annoying teenager pretty much. And at the end of the game he's really just... such a great character. Overall, I think the entire SES team is some of the most interesting characters. Of course, that's pretty much a given, as they want to make those more interesting than the other social links perhaps, or side characters. That's a given. But I think they really nailed down the atmosphere of the entire team and the dynamic of the team kind of well. Like how you can go to the dorm and you can talk to each of them pretty much every night, and some nights they aren't down in the main lobby, they can be on the other third floor, so sometimes you have to go search for them. That was a great small change that really made them feel more alive. The only thing I really dislike is that they could have also been out in the city in certain places. They could have been like, I don't know, for example, maybe Junpei could have been at a ramen place or around the ramen place sometime, or Fuka could have been goes to an electronic store or something. Stuff like that could have added a lot to the game, in my opinion. And also the lack of chemistry, or the chemistry between some of the members, also add to the dynamic a lot. For example, the best example I have is probably Yukari and Junpei, and then Akihiko and Mitsuru. Akihiko and Mitsuru have this... they respect each other, obviously. They are each other's... they're kind of like the grown-ups, the dad and mom of the group in some way. And I feel they really nailed down that aspect. And then Yukari and Junpei are these sibling-like rivalry, teasing each other all the time and But by the end, they also have evolved, and they care for each other so much, and it's so great. It's so impressive how they've done this, and it feels just completely natural. I don't know how, but they really did. The moments that the team are together is also probably my favorite. I really enjoyed those small moments, but I wanted more of them. I wanted like something around Christmas, for example. There's nothing. There's just another day pretty much. Or something around Halloween, or something where they go celebrate together more. I know there were a few with the festival, and then we had the trip to, I think it was Kyoto, if I remember it correctly. Those were really great and added a lot to the background, and it made the team and game feel more alive, more real, if you want to say it like that. And as an aside, the recordings in the rec room, not rec room, oh fuck, what is it called? Recordings in the room, you know what room I'm talking about. They also added a lot of character to the characters, that you most of the time got to see them 1 by 1 or 2 by 2. It really added depth to their already deep characters, and sometimes it was humorous and sometimes it was questionable. That's the best I can say pretty much. But I enjoy those. It was probably some of the most funny ones I've seen. Junpei break-in. It was so fucking funny. And then we get to the other parts of the game. The overall arcing storyline is really mature, more than I had thought at first, and I think I like this storyline more than pretty much both Persona 4 and 5, if I'm being honest. There are though some aspects of the storyline from the 4th game and the 5th game that I like more, but overall as the theme of the story, this felt the most solid. I also like the focus on time and death, of course. That's a huge part of this story. That it's not really about not accepting death and stuff like that. It's more along the lines of that you should accept it. There will be a day that you die, and that you should enjoy the time you have to the fullest. That you shouldn't really put off enjoying things. And I really, really appreciated that. That also ties into the ending, of course, where if you're not really paying attention, you can easily miss the subtle nods and subtle details of the ending. But the way they tied it together, my eyes is getting teary-eyed. They did it so well. I can't really complain about anything. There were small details. If you look at the ending cutscene, you can actually notice that before the other team gets there, and you're just lying down with Aegis there. She has normal human ears, she has normal human hands, everything like that. How they really made Aegis feel human at the end, especially for the main character. Very impressive stuff. And it also made it feel very bittersweet. But at the same time, I felt content. I don't need any more than that. I don't need to play the answer to get the answer, because it felt like something whole for me at least. I know what happens in the answer, yes you know, but I don't need to play it to feel satisfied with the game. I also liked the aspects of death that ties into the story. Even from Ken's storyline has death tied into it, of course, with his mom and then later Shinjiro. And Koromaru, the dog, also has death tied into his story. Yukari has death tied into her story with her dad, for example. That's a huge part of her storyline. Junpei has death tied into his story. Mitsuru, everyone has some aspect of death tied into their storyline, which is something I didn't think about until now, I think. I didn't really think about it, but wow, I didn't realize it. Anyway, I think that's really smart how they did it, because it's very subtle in some cases. If you don't think about it like I did now and then realized I was kind of missing out on some things. But they each have to deal with death in some way, which makes them grow as a character and makes them stand out in their own unique way in how they act with death and how they deal with it, how it affects them too. And I also think they handled Shinjiro's death very well. I felt quite early on that there was something about him that he was going to die. I felt like that, so I wasn't that surprised. But I also think they handled it with the gravity that it needed. And there are few games that do that today. Some games do it really well, but overall I think, because this is an old game too. In reality, it's like early 2000s or something. So I was shocked that they did it so well. And I also like what they did with Ryoji. Overall, I think he was kind of predictable as well, especially with the end of the Pharaoh's social link. And then, here is Ryoji, a new kid in the school. He came from nowhere pretty much, and he is quite similar to Pharaoh's, just a grown-up version. A bit predictable, if I do say so. But at the same time, it's also you can't call it a social link, I think, but a story bit, part of the story that I enjoyed very much. And then of course we have the gameplay. Oh my god, it is quite annoying, to be honest. The first 20 hours, 30 hours perhaps, was kind of annoying. It took me a large amount of time to get used to not being able to control your teammates, and that's another thing that really frustrated me early on, is the lack of tactics available at the start, and how you can only get more tactics by leveling up the full social link. That's very dumb in my opinion, especially when you can't control your teammates. If you could control your teammates, but then could have tactics as well, then I could understand it, but not so here. I also feel like the game was way too grindy at pretty much all times. When I wanted to do every quest, and especially towards the end, it felt very grindy. It felt more like a chore in the end than something I would enjoy. So I think they could have made someplace easier to grind in the end, so you don't have to fight just to gain a level, and then yeah. Very annoying, to be honest. It could have used less of that, and it would have been a better game for it. Which also ties into the dungeons, the Tartarus dungeons. They are way too samey. I know this is an older game, and that's part of why, but there are few changes between every major different Tartarus floor, if that makes sense. I appreciated that they changed the music slightly in every new part, but it doesn't really take away from the sameness that I experienced. Persona 4 did pretty much the same thing, which is why I appreciate Persona 5 so very much more. They had unique dungeons and they felt very unique. It didn't feel like a chore, or it didn't feel tiring to play through the dungeons. And I do have to say, both in this game, Persona 3 and Persona 4, it was grindy at times. And that also ties into RNG and game overs. I feel like early on the RNG is very unfair. I know a certain enemy, let me put it on screen if I remember it.
Help me! This thing won't give up!
That one just won't die.
Look out!
It seems to have multiple weaknesses.
Not
good. Takeba's down. Not good. Iori's down. Come on, hang in there.
That's another thing, that you get the game over and then you have to go to the title screen, you have to go in and then you have to load, and then you're back where you last saved. So if you hadn't saved for a while, you had a lot to take in. You had a lot to grind again, which is annoying. Especially because there aren't any save zones in Tartarus itself. You have to go back to the beginning and then you have to go back and when in battle, it's very annoying, again, that you can't really control your teammates. I know it's a meme at this point, but Marin, Kari, Mitsuru, holy shit.
Did somebody say Marin Karen?
What the fuck? In the end, it's a bit better. She does more attacks, she does more healing and more big brain stuff. In the beginning, it's just like she's an airhead. Yeah, I felt also that the persona leveling system kinda, again, more grinding. It felt very annoying, especially because, for example, Mitsuru, she's the Empress. You don't get her until late in the game. I think it's November or something. That's why you can't really level up any Empress related persona before that, because oftentimes they need few thousand experience points just to level up once, which just adds to the grindy aspect of the game that it already has, and just strengthens it tenfold pretty much. Which also ties into that you can't really make certain personas viable no matter how hard you try. Orpheus, you can make him viable, but you can't at the same time. Then you need to fuse stronger personas than him, two of the Fool, Social Link, with the Fool Arcana, sorry. You need to fuse them, and then Orpheus can get stronger, and then you need to fuse two others, and he can get strong. But I didn't really have time for that. I think they handled it much better in the 5th game especially. But also in the 4th game, I made my Izanagi pretty strong, if I remember it right. In the 5th game I made my, what is it called? RSM, very strong. And of course the ending fight was something I really enjoyed, because I was on the edge. It's balling, okay? It's great. Both the design and the thematic of the boss, that it changes arcanas and then you have to change your tactics around a little bit. I don't think I chose the best teammates for the ending fight. I should have had Yukari perhaps. Yukari, Mitsuru and maybe Akihiko. Or I could have had Yukari, Akihiko, and then I could have had Aegis or Junpei. That could have worked too. As an aside, I also think Strega was large pushovers. I felt like they were more intimidating in the anime. If you haven't seen it, you can. It's very different from the game though. Keep that in mind. Then we have pretty much talked about everything. I think the only thing I haven't really mentioned yet is some stuff about the atmosphere and some stuff about the soundtrack. Oh my god, the soundtrack. It's amazing. They don't miss. They just don't miss. The soundtrack is pretty much what makes the entire game like this good. The only thing I was getting tired of in the end is of course the Tartarus music. It gets very repetitive, so I appreciated that you could actually change soundtracks while you're exploring floors. But then day-to-day life, social links, soundtracks, intro soundtrack, outro soundtrack, ending soundtrack, oh my god. And the final boss, that soundtrack as well. I didn't really expect it to be a remix of the Aria of the Soul piece, but more shredding, rocking. That was cool, I do have to say. Wow. I have some memes about the soundtrack, I can throw them up on screen and you can see.
Oh my god, is it? Oh, he's back. It's finally him. been right here. I've been waiting for you to come home, baby. All is lost.
But overall, the soundtrack feels like this 90s feel of Japanese hip-hop mixed with other bangers, other styles. They really nailed it down well. Then I don't have much more. The atmosphere in the game is something very, especially in the dawn, it's very cozy feeling in the dawn. Then there are some things I thought about that kinda bothered me. Evokers are never really explained how they work, they're just thrown into your face and like, you need this one to call forth your persona, and why does it work? We don't know. So I don't really know what they work unless I missed something. I might have done that. Who knows? Could have been me. Other than that, amazing game. I highly recommend it, and I do hope it gets some tender love and care in the form of maybe a remake or something. It really deserves it. I feel like the story, they have so much to work with in the story, and the ability to control your teammates, redo the Tartars a bit so it kind of gets unique floors. It could have added a lot to the overall game. I liked the Love Hotel part of the game, was probably one of my favorites in terms of exploring floors, and because it felt unique. It was something very different than what I was used to. The train as well is one of those, although it was a bit short, the train. I also liked to explore the old abandoned mine. I think it was a mine or military bunker part. That was fun. But yeah, that is pretty much it. I think I mentioned everything so far. So let's tie it up with some favorite things and stuff like that. Alright, favorite soundtrack is probably the ending soundtrack, or possibly also the XM soundtrack. That's a banger. That's a hidden banger, just saying. Character-wise, I think Junpei is the most interesting of the bunch. I wish Uka could have been more interesting. She is interesting, don't get me wrong, but she could have been more fleshed out in my opinion. I was close though, because in the end I felt like Mitsuru was really interesting. Her social link, her character, she had place for growth, stuff like that. So if I would replay the game now, I might go for to max out her social link. And that's it. Thank you if you managed to get this far, just me blabbing on about Persona 3. Congratulations and thank you very much for listening. Aside from that, expect more Persona things to come. If we get some sort of remake or remaster, blah blah blah, or ultimate edition thing, I would definitely play it, so stay tuned for that. Hit the subscribe and hit the like if you liked the video, otherwise you can leave a dislike and let me know in the comments if there's anything you thought about or anything I missed and I can probably reply to you. I hope at least. Until next time, great time, and as always, have a great time.